Ladies and gentlemen, good day, good morning, good evening, good night, good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. I had some last night in the pitch, and I guess you could say that it's all because of me. Now, if anyone should ever write my life story, it'll be about this. Ladies and gentlemen, comprehensive PSA participation rebuttal completed. There are sample PSA agreements, actual PSA agreements with several of the banks: Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, New York Bank, Mullen, Deutsche Bank. All of their standard agreements are in there. Wells Fargo, even their guide is in there. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have the link to this zip file. Okay, this is not no simple zip file. Please understand that. There are sample appellate packets, appeal briefs, and so forth there. The link will be provided in the description. Now, that's the first thing. Now, I want to tell you what I did this morning so that y'all understand. I'm sorry. Let me pause y'all for just a second. Apologize. I had to take care of something in the background. Let me go ahead and tell you what I did. These are PSA agreements. This is Discover. This is probably New York Bank, Mullen, and a couple of others. They were too large for me to put everything in this one conversation. But what I told it is said, hey, we have the facts. Because the borrowers don't understand pooling and servicing agreements, because the banks enter into these pooling and servicing agreements on behalf of the borrower as the custodian for the borrower, and that there is an indemnification agreement. And I put the indemnification agreement from Federal Reserve Operating Circular number 10. Put the whole indemnification agreement. You see, the borrower is indeed part of the pooling and servicing agreement. Each of the pooling and servicing agreements attached here too, you will provide the name of the pooling and servicing agreement, the name of the parties, the trust fund. There is a trust fund, there is a trustee, but you don't understand that because you've never read your pooling and servicing agreement because it's written in legalese. But we have GPT models now. We can take our pooling and servicing agreement, which we can ask, pay attention, the servicer for. You have a right to that information. You will ask the servicer, you will ask, pay attention, the so-called creditor, who is don't call them an intermediary. Just say, hey, I need a copy of the pooling and servicing agreement. Associated, mortgage follows the note follows the mortgage. I need to see a copy of that. It's not a private agreement, it is public. You need to provide it. It's simple. Then you're going to put it in there and say, oh, there's a document in here, ladies and gentlemen. It's called the presumption killer. You'll see it. Big, huge, long name. And at the end of the name, hold on, let's see if we can pull it up right here. Right here. Right here. Let's see. Is this it? Nope, that's not it. It starts off with the rebuttal. That's not it. I don't know which one it is, boss. There it is, killer. See how it says at the very end? Right there at the very end, it says killer. Killer. Kill her. I mean, killer. Okay. So that's the one you want. That's the one that puts the congressional intent that you are a bank, puts the presidential intent that you're a bank, puts the intent from the Federal Reserve Act that you are a bank, that you're an individual or a corporation or a partnership seeking a loan. You have access to the discount window. That kills that presumption so you don't have to worry about explaining it. You upload that document first. Upload the killer document first into your GPT before you start asking questions because it already takes care of the presumptions. And then you can do your research and see that you're part of the pooling and servicing agreement. What does that mean? That means that you're entitled to dividends. I've been saying it for years. In 2003, I allowed my brother to get a property in my name, $108,000 property in a city within the state of California. He rented it out for over a year and a half, and then he sold it. I didn't get a dime from that excuse me, from that transaction, but he sold the house and I got it recorded on my credit. That name is perfect. It has perfect credit. Ladies and gentlemen, I want y'all to understand something. When they would send those papers, the bank sends all of those papers. They used to do it on a regular basis back then. But when they would send all of those papers, I would go through it. And you know what I noticed in there? A 1099-C. At the time, I didn't do 1099-Cs. I'm sorry, 1099 OID. I apologize. Not a C. 1099 OID. I didn't do OIDs. I didn't do 1099s at all. I saw it in there and I read it because I was always taught to read everything. Not like the rest of you guys. You just get papers and you just let them just sit there. And I read it. And then years later, it was said, hey, they send this stuff to you in the mail. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I got it. I remember that. And then they send you a notice, hey, we ain't gonna send this to you no more since if you don't let us know you want to keep receiving it. And I'm like, okay, I understand that too. Well, what you didn't understand is that you're part of the pooling and servicing agreement. The courts say that you are not part of the pooling and servicing agreement. Hold on now. They say it. They don't prove it. They just say it because it's a presumption. If you don't understand anything about what I's doing, and if you doubt that the borrower has anything to do with this, then read over the Presumption Killer PDF attached here too, which identifies the borrower as capable of receiving funds as a U.S. borrower from the discount window with the depository institution operating as custodian. That's what you're going to do. Now, see, I want to give you this GPT, but here's the problem. If I give you this GPT, you won't be able to upload your document into this GPT. So just follow the instructions, people. Okay, this is a courtesy because ain't nobody else doing this for you. Go ahead. Why do you think they keep attacking my GPTs? Because ain't nobody else providing this stuff for you to hit them so hard in the head that they, man, what happened? Okay, that's what you're trying to get them to say. Man, what happened? I don't know. I just woke up a second ago. How long have I been out? That's what you want them to say. This is what the GPT says. Now, I haven't read this. I did the video immediately after asking that question. I got up this morning. I already knew what I was going to do. I was going to find some pooling and servicing agreements, bona fide, legitimate, current pooling and servicing agreements. And I was going to put it in here and I was going to ask this question. I'll create a comprehensive rebuttal establishing the borrower's party status to the pooling and servicing agreement through the Federal Reserve operating framework and the servicing agreements I've provided. Rebuttal to presumption that the borrower is not a party to the pooling and servicing agreement. Let me show you how you guys are party to the pooling and servicing agreement. Let me show you how they do it. We talk about as custodian and attorney in fact for the borrower who is the principal and pledger of the collateral. Remember, you are the pledger of the collateral. You pledged the collateral. You gave authorization. The collateral is the security. If you don't give authorization, the security doesn't get traded. Of course, you're part of the pooling and servicing agreement. The Housing Finance Authority of Manatee County, their servicing agreement, the servicer shall pledge such a mortgage to the financial institution providing funding for such purchase until such time as the mortgage-backed security is created and sold to the issuer, trustee, or custodian. The custodian is the depository institution which you gave power of attorney to. Don't worry about it. You gave it to them at closing. You don't even realize it. Mississippi Home Corporation mortgagee, revenue bond. See, theirs is a bond servicing agreement. Pooling and servicing agreement, it lists the parties. The single family mortgage revenue bond program, pay attention, single family home loan guarantee program, single family. Anytime you see this, this means that this involves the United States Department of Agriculture. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae, Ginnie Mae, all of them. Pay attention. The borrower identified the mortgager, defined throughout the agreement as the party whose promissory note creates the collateral. But they say you're not part of that agreement. You're called the mortgager. Of course, you're part of the agreement. All you got to do is pull up your pooling and servicing agreement and look at where it says mortgager and who is identified as the mortgager. You. The right to proceeds states the servicer shall not consent to any changes in the terms and conditions of any mortgage loan or release of specific property from the lien of the mortgage without affecting the rights and interests of the applicable GSE, the issuer, the trustee, the custodian, and the bondholders. The borrower, the mortgager's instrument is the corpus, the body of the security. The servicing agreement cannot function without the borrower's collateral. I didn't say it. Discover. You guys know Discover? Well, they partnered up with US Bank. This is their third amended and restated pooling and servicing agreement. The trust fund's name from the document, the parties, depositor, the bank, your custodian, the servicer, the trustee, and the certificate holder. You are the depositor, people. They are a depository institution. They operate as custodian. The borrower's identification, the borrower's promissory note constitutes a receivable that are pooled. Right to proceeds, the entire cash flow structure depends on the payment from the borrowers whose note comprises of the receivable pool. Without the borrower's promissory note, no receivable exists to be pooled and securitized. You are part of the pooling and servicing agreement. Pay attention. You indemnify the bank and its officers and directors and employees and agents for any loss claim, damage, liability, expense incurred by an indemnified party in the course of or arising from the performance of lending agreement and acts related to the collateral. This indemnification clause binds the borrower to obligations arising from the bank's actions. You are party to the agreement by way of that agreement, that power of attorney. And he gives me the conclusions of law. Under the law of agency, restatement third of contracts, or no, restatement third of agency. An agency relationship exists when one party, the principal, you, manifests assent, an agreement, to another party's agent, the bank, shall act as on your behalf. But you control that relationship. It's just you give them power of attorney in fact, irrevocable power of attorney in fact. But where there is a breach, where there is fraud, you have not been paid. They're claiming you owe a debt, and then they're trying to take your home. They don't have the right to take your home. They are lying, putting in false information on the record. They said they're indemnified. Ladies and gentlemen, it's called an unconscionable clause. And that's how you get rid of that indemnification, by saying it's an unconscionable clause and go after them for, now, wait, let's do that. Okay? Let's do that. We got the other pooling and servicing agreements that already did that. We know what it did. Wake up. I need you to rebut the presumption that the power of attorney in fact, which is said to be irrevocable, is not an unconscionable agreement as a matter of law. Stop listening. Y'all excuse me while I get that pooling and servicing agreement unconscionability. because it says you give them full irrevocable covenant power of attorney and authority to act in your place in your stead. And then there's indemnification. Ooh-wee, they completely indemnified. And we don't want them to be indemnified. We want them to be petrified. And so, but I'll give you guys this link as well. You'll have the link for the documents, and you'll have this link right here. That the irrevocable power of attorney granted under Section 12.3 of the Federal Reserve Agreement is valid, enforceable, contractual provision, and does not constitute an unconscionable agreement as a matter of law. Now, the Federal Reserve Lending Agreement states, the Federal Reserve Lending Agreement states, the Federal Reserve Lending Agreement states, the borrower appoints the bank with full irrevocable power of attorney and power of substitution. That means they can substitute banks and trade and sell it and all of that stuff. This provision grants the bank unlimited discretion. Any act deemed necessary and advisable to the bank without requiring notice to you, the consent from the borrower, or any showing that the bank's judgment is reasonable or in the borrower's interests. It further states the power of attorney is coupled with an interest as it is irrevocable and full power of substitution is granted to the assignee by the borrower. This provision purports to be irrevocable and transferable to any assignee or holder without limitation, without the borrower's knowledge or consent, and without any fiduciary duty owed to the borrower by such an assignee and or holder. This section right here, the attorney, in fact, the bank may take any lawful action to collect sums due in connection with the collateral. The bank may release any collateral instrument or agreement securing the evidence of the obligation as fully as if it were the borrower. The bank is granted power to release the borrower's collateral without any requirement to notify the borrower, to obtain the borrower's consent, or to demonstrate that such a release serves in the borrower's interest. Now, it gives you all of those facts. Now, we need the conclusion of law. Now, that's a lot of facts. It gave us 12 facts. The transferee owes no fiduciary duty to the borrower. The bank can transfer the power to any party. Now, let's do this. Conclusion of law. The contract is procedurally unconscionable when there is an absence of meaningful choice due to the gross inequity in the bargaining power. Hey, look at that. It gave us a case. 12.3 is procedurally unconscionable because the borrower has no ability to negotiate or modify the terms. The provisions is presented on a take it or leave it basis, and the borrower cannot obtain access to federal lending without accepting the provision. Exactly, you have no other option. At closing, you must sign it. The bank possesses vastly superior bargaining power as the sole gatekeeper of the federal credit facilities, and no alternative lending source provides a comparable access to Federal Reserve discount window borrowing. The borrower's choice to accept or reject the provisions is illusionary when rejecting means forfeiture of the right to access. Conclusion of law. The contract is substantially unconscionable when its terms are unreasonably favoring one party and opposite to the other. Unconscionability requires both procedural and substantive elements. And then it breaks it down. It gives us another conclusion of law, conclusion of law, conclusion of law, conclusion of law. Irrevocability. Why irrevocable? Dual procedure and substantive unconscionability. That's why it's not irrevocable, it's revocable. Violation of revocability doctrine. And it gives you all of that. Again, they can't stop it now, ladies and gentlemen. The presumption killer. You kill all the stupid presumptions because they operate on presumptions. They don't get to operate on presumptions anymore because you're going to use the presumption killer prompt. All you got to do is upload the killer PDF when dealing with a mortgage, and it will take care of everything, give you what you need, a power of attorney, that eliminates all fiduciary duty, grants unlimited discretion without accountability, and cannot be revoked by the principal, is unconscionable in a matter of law and violates fundamental principles of agency. Now, watch this. Let's see this. We're going to just take this. We ain't going to take the document, the presumption killer. We're going to just take this section right here. Man, that's a whole lot that it did right there. That's a whole lot. Let's take all of this, all the nooks and the crannies, and we're going to do this right here because we talked to grandma's hands. Went to church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands played the tambourine so well. Sorry, I was listening to Gladys Knight and she was singing Grandma's Hands. I didn't know that Billy Withers wrote that song. Man, Billy Withers, man, that man was a genius because Billy Withers. What? Y'all don't know who Billy Withers is? Aw. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Only darkness every day. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone so long. Anytime she goes away. That's Billy, y'all. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, rebuttal to presumption of validity. Now remember, I want you to pay attention. I didn't put the rebuttal prompt in here. This is Deepseek. Presumption rebuttal. The presumption that the irrevocable power of attorney is not unconscionable as a matter of law is contradicted by the fundamental principles of agency law, contract law, and equity. The provision is both procedurally and substantially unconscionable and violates. That's how you challenge the so-called bank. You challenge the agreement. They want to come in there and say, we have an agreement, Your Honor. No, the agreement is unconscionable, Your Honor, because it contains these provisions. That's how you take care of it. Look, we're going to be talking about this for a while. I told you, you guys just got over 40 videos in a matter of 5 days, focusing on just this. The whole month of December and the ending of November is only on this issue. I couldn't pay attention, give it all to you at once because you have to get out of that mindset. You have to stop defending yourself. All of you are in that defensive mode. You're not in attack mode. It's time to get in attack mode. So I'm giving you the tools. The presumption of validity cannot stand. Section 12.3 is not a routine commercial power, but an unconscionable provision that seeks to create a legally impossible construct. An agency relationship without fiduciary duty, coupled with an unlimited, irrevocable, and transferable power exercised solely for the agent's behalf. This was written by an attorney, probably a group of attorneys. They know you guys don't know contract law, but you have this guy who got started with contract law. Look, the Bible talks about covenants. You have the Abrahamic covenant, the Adamic covenant. You even have the kingdom covenant. There are two of those. Ladies and gentlemen, a covenant is an agreement. It's a promise. Well, a contract is a covenant. You guys have heard of covenants. A contract is a covenant. I've been into contract law since about the age of 8 when I first started learning about that with Jehovah's Witnesses, because that's what they would talk about during the Watchtower study that they have at the Kingdom Hall. And I started getting into covenants and contracts. I started getting interested because everything was a contract. Everything is contract, everyone. Well, this is an unconscionable contract. This is an invalid clause. Why? Because it favors one side more heavily than the other and gives the other side no recourse and indemnifies the one side. They can do whatever they want. That's what makes it unconscionable. That's why we're attacking it. So I'm going to put this back in the other one. Not that part. I'm going to put the Deepseek response. Okay? And I'm going to put the thinking in there as well, because the thinking is very important. Why the thinking? Because it lets you know what they, the judges and the attorneys, are going to say. You needs that, homie. You needs that. And you guys are going to get a copy of this link, okay? Because grandma's hands went to church on Sunday morning. Grandma's hands played them tambourines so well. What? Now, what he's doing is he's rebutting it again. Constitutes that the irrevocable power of attorney with the Federal Reserve constitutes a valid and enforceable contractual provision that is not unconscionable as a matter of law. And then he's going to rebut the presumption. Because guess what? Look, I didn't even tell it you need to rebut the presumption, did I? I didn't tell Deepseek to rebut the presumption. Deepseek just knew that it had to rebut the presumption. Why? Because this is not legal advice. It's not the law. It's just rebutting a presumption. And that's how you get around their stupid new rules, because they can't do anything about that. You do have a right to rebut presumptions. A rebuttal of a presumption has nothing to do with law. Now I'm gonna tell you, let's redo this one. Okay? Let's redo this. I'm gonna have it do this one over again. Y'all don't mind? Watch what I do. Wake up, but this time you must provide facts and conclusions of law, comma, act of Congress, comma, statute at large, comma, U.S. Code in parentheses, comma, and 3, Supreme Court precedent for each rebuttal. Stop listening. Uh-oh. Give me say editing the message creates a new conversation. Yes, I know that. It ain't letting me do nothing. Oh, okay. It didn't let me do anything, so give me 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm supposed to be able to do this, do that right there, and do that. And it's supposed to start the conversation, and it wouldn't let me do it. Okay. But now it's letting me do it, okay? And now he's going to give you facts and conclusions of the law with the rebuttal. See, now we have case citations. We have the act, the statute at large, and the U.S. Code. And where my case citation? We have a case citation here. Fact number 3. Well, he didn't give a case citation here because he just used the act of Congress. I mean, the Federal Reserve Operating Circular. So we have another case here. Where's my other conclusive law? Another case, section 7.5. Well, look at that. I didn't read this one. As attorney, in fact, the bank may take any lawful action to collect all sums in connection with that. Section 7.5 deals with the agency relationship. Okay. Obligation as fully as if the borrower were acting for itself, and the bank may take any action as set forth in 7.5, but the bank has no obligation to take such action. Okay, that's what 7.5 says, and it provides the law and everything. Every contract or duty within the Uniform Commercial Code imposes an obligation of good faith in its performance and enforcement. It's not good faith when they have no obligation. The bank does, it's not obligated to do anything, but they're a fiduciary. Of course, they have an obligation. Okay, and so he produces that. Here's our conclusion of law. The Judiciary Act of 1789, September 24th, 1789, granted federal courts the authority to apply common law principles of agency and fiduciary duty. The federal common law, pay attention, the Supreme Court said there is no federal common law. There is a national common law. Okay? Now, I want y'all to understand something. You see how it said federal common law? It did this on purpose because it wants to discredit. So give me 1 second. Wake up. You just contradicted Erie versus Tompkins, where the Supreme Court said you were wrong. Erie Railroad are wrong. There is no federal common law, but there is a national common law as identified by the Seventh Amendment to the Constitution. Stop listening. In Erie versus Tompkins, the Supreme Court said that there is no federal common law. Look at that. It won't let me do this. Is he's still responding. That's what it is. That's why it won't let me. Look at he's still going. Look at you go, boy. He's still going. He's still responding to the question. He's still giving conclusions of law. He's giving facts. He's giving citations, letting you know what is what is. The only thing he had wrong was the federal common law. Now, the Federal Reserve Act authorized federal banks to make advances secured by the satisfaction of such Federal Reserve Bank as grants authority to require adequate collateral. Why refutable and blah blah blah. He's still going, y'all. He look at that. He is been going for a minute, like that bunny that's just got some energy. Look. There we go. We finally got to the top. Whew. That's a whole lot of going and going and going and going and going and going and going, and he's still going. Oh well, I gotta wait for him. Might as well put y'all on hold. Uh, you know what? I just had the spinners in my head. This is our fork in the road. Love has left us alone. There's nowhere to go. Oh no, but you made your choice. What? I got music, okay, in my head 24 hours a day. You are absolutely correct, and I apologize for the critical error. Let me correct and take care of that. So he's going to undo the common law authority. The Seventh Amendment to the Constitution preserves the common law as it existed at the time of ratification in suits at common law under the rules of common law. This constitutional provision preserves and references the national common law, the general common law recognized throughout the United States, not federal common law created by federal courts. Pay attention. The Supreme Court said there is no federal common law, and they were 100% right, but there is a national common law. You follow me? That's where you need to understand. There is no federal constitution because the federal constitution was the Confederate. It's gone. There is no federal government in the United States. It is a national government. Shh, don't tell nobody because y'all would never really understand it anyway. So that takes care of that. And so now you will have the information. Some of y'all, you really, really, really going to have to do some research. I'm giving you the research tools to start saving your homes, giving you the arguments to stop the stupidity that they're doing to each one of you. They want to keep messing with me. I want to mess back. They want to say that this is sovereign citizen stuff. I'm sorry, you can't sovereign citizen a rebuttal. See, that's what they did. They started calling people sovereign citizens, and people took on that title and that mantle 2008 to 2012. Everybody was calling themselves a sovereign citizen. So I had to rebut the presumption because the court started saying that they were part of some movement and they killed a couple of people who had guns. They went after the people who they knew had guns, and so they could vilify the whole group. Sorry, y'all. You didn't know? Well, that's what they did. They did that on purpose. And that's why that's a sovereign citizen argument. The first thing the court said, I'm sorry, and that's a presumption. I'm not arguing with you. I gave you a fact and conclusion of law. And are you saying that Congress doesn't know what it's doing? Are you saying that those were not facts and conclusions of law? Then if you're saying that, say it on the record. Let's get it documented that you're contradicting the law. That's how you handle a judge who wants to say that's a sovereign citizen argument. Now, with me, they never say it to my face. They'll say it on paper. They'll never say it to my face. And they won't use the term sovereign citizen with me. Excuse me. They will not use the term sovereign citizen with me. I wish they would. I've already told them that. When they talk about me from a distance. They do not come directly at me. I wish they would. Some of them think they, got some cojones and they can come my way. I wish they would. See, I've been preparing for this all my life. I've been doing this longer than many of those idiots have been on the bench. And like I said, they only know policy and procedure. They don't know law, which is why they never challenge me. They always circumvent, go around, and come up with some procedural stupidity. That's okay. Like I said, they keep messing with me. I'm going to keep messing with them because this is how I mess with them, y'all. See this right here? Y'all going to get all of this right here, all of these nooks and crannies. Excuse me. I got one more thing to do. Now, the thing I'm about to do, see the maxim at the end, that's where he solidifies everything. That means he's finished. Okay, that's why he gave me the maxim, because he's giving me facts and conclusions of law. Now, you do see that this is a whole lot. You know what? I know what I'm going to do. You guys are going to get access to the folder where the files are. Okay, you're not going to get just access to the zip. I'm going to take this right here. Right here. I'm going to take this right here. And we're going to get rid of them because they ain't got no business being here. Check 21 at and get rid of that too. Hey, where my pictures at? Okay, and then we are gonna go here and get my pictures. I need my pictures. And while we have our pictures in the background, I need to open up a Word doc. I'm doing this for y'all, so y'all gonna wait while I do it. We're gonna click on this. Sorry, it's an allergy thing, ragweed, cottonwood. We've had the rains a couple of weeks ago, and it hasn't rained since. But man, this grass and these weeds and stuff are growing like gangrene. Okay, done killed all of my moringa trees. The frostbite done devastated my moringas, but it's okay. I take care of it. I will take care of it. Ladies and gentlemen, rebuttal of presumption. Okay, let's do that. We're gonna copy. We're gonna put that there. We're gonna take this. We're gonna and we're gonna bold it so that we are there. And then we're gonna come here, uppercase. This is just slightly bigger than that, so now we make it the same size. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the new title. And we saves it for y'all. I'm gonna put this rebuttal to the presumption, the irrevocable power of attorney. I'm gonna put this in that folder. I'm not gonna do it while you guys are here. I'll do it in the background. So it'll be included in that folder. Start the conversation with the presumption killer and this document. This document is 30 pages. It already kills the presumption. Okay, it already deals with the power of attorney. Okay, so there you go. All right, hey, I gotta go. That's 40 minutes. Arriba.